Welcome to the Louis Bellina Show here on a Friday in June. Caleb Rappolee here on the Zone, 1150 AM, 93.7 FM, guest hosting as part of the summer edition of the Louis Bellina Show. This is my final day guest hosting, so excited to spend 2 hours with y'all one more time. It is June. It is starting to be the dog days of summer, but we've still got sports to talk about. The MLB nearing the midpoint of the 2026 season. Lots going on there. The All-Star ballots, Phase 1 has concluded. We will talk about that. We've got the resurgence of Astros baseball. I want to dive into that a little later in the show. They're finally starting to turn it around. It looked very, very bleak in April, but they are starting to show the type of talent that I think that they have. I'm going to talk about that a little later. At 11:35, we have a listen-in. Greg McElroy's Always College Football Podcast. He continues to get us ready for the 2026 college football season as he breaks down the top 10 secondaries in the nation. Texas A&M is on the list. We don't know where yet, so you'll get to find out right along with us where the Aggies rank in McElroy's top 10. That's at 11:35. We're going to do something that, I feel like doesn't get enough shine in the sports world these days. I want to talk a little motorsport. The NASCAR season, another sport that's in full swing here in the summer, along with baseball. I think it's starting to tick back up in popularity a little bit, and I think that's great for the world of sports. NASCAR was always a big thing for me growing up, and of course the World Cup is going on. And the U.S. men's national team dropped a game last night, but we will get into all of that later in the show. Starting it off with something that broke earlier this morning. Texas A&M Baseball bringing in another transfer portal pitcher, Trent Collier from Oklahoma, a lefty from the Sooners, the defending national championship Sooners. He only made 18 appearances this season, so not used just a ton for Skip Johnson's squad, but 3.80 ERA, 28 strikeouts in 23 innings. Pretty solid for a sophomore. Interested to see what Barry Enright can do to develop him. He joins the ranks of portal arms that the Aggies have brought in. I think he's only the second lefty of the 6 pitchers now. And that follows Juan Vargas announcing his departure from the program yesterday as he enters the transfer portal. He transferred from Tennessee Tech to the Aggies in the past offseason and will now be looking for new opportunities. He is the 5th Aggie baseball player to enter the portal to leave the program, following MJ Bollinger back during the season, actually. Luke Billings, Sawyer Farr, and Sam Erickson in the few days after the portal opened. Vargas entering late in the game as the portal will close on Wednesday, I believe. Tuesday, June 30th is when the portal closes. So kind of getting in at the 11th hour. It'll be interesting to see how his recruitment goes. We wish him the best of luck, of course. But this Aggie pitching staff is going to look a lot different this year. I think probably only 2 of the biggest contributors will be back on the squad in 2027. Of course, Aiden Sims, we hope he's fully healthy and ready to go, and I think he will be. Hopefully, we'll see what happens with Clayton Freshcorn. That all depends on where he goes in this summer's MLB draft. But he will have a big role on the team if he does come back. And a lot of these portal arms are going to make huge impacts for Texas A&M this year. I'm really excited to see Johnny Nuanez, see what he can do now that he's at the SEC level. He spent his college career at lower levels. I think he started in the junior college ranks last year at Wichita State, a 2.56 ERA, 58 strikeouts, one of the best starters in that conference. We'll see how that translates to the SEC, but I'm really excited to watch him play. This Aggie pitching staff will look a lot different, which is to be expected when you bring in a new pitching coach. And it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Some other headlines in the MLB world. I mentioned the All-Star ballot. Phase 1 voting is complete. So these are the players that will be eligible to be selected as starters by the fans, and 2 players already have their starting spots confirmed as they were the top vote getters in each league. Shohei Ohtani, of course, 3.3 million votes, is the top vote getter in the National League and the MLB. So he will be the starting designated hitter for the NL squad. And in the American League, Yordan Alvarez was leading for a while. He ended up with 2.9 million votes and was unfortunately overtaken by Ernie Clement, second baseman from the Blue Jays, who got 3.2 million votes. So he will be the starting second baseman for the AL squad following Toronto's runner-up performance in the 2025 World Series. So he will be managed by his own manager, which is always fun. There will be some other Blue Jays on the team as well, as Vladdy Jr. is the leading vote getter at the first base spot. Kazuma Okamoto, the leading vote getter at the third base spot. And then Dalton Varsho and Jesus Sanchez, both in the top 6 of the AL outfielders. There weren't any other Astros that made the cut for Phase 2 of the All-Star ballots. Yordan, the only one, the leading vote getter at the DH spot. The other top vote getter at DH in the AL was George Springer of the Blue Jays, former Astro. So that will be who Yordan is up against in Phase 2 to decide the starters. So the fans do get to pick the position player starters for the for the All-Star game. And then the backups and pitchers are chosen in a variety of ways. I believe there's a couple committees, and the managers of the teams get a say as well. The managers of the teams will be the AL and NL champions from last year, so the Dodgers and Blue Jays, Rob Schneider and Dave Roberts. Speaking of managers, it was announced about an hour ago that the Mets are firing Carlos Mendoza, who has been at the helm for one of the most disappointing teams in baseball this year. The Mets sit in last place in the NL East. Started the year 9-19, including a 12-game losing streak, which is absolutely brutal. As an Astros fan, you know exactly what I mean, as we've had some rough streaks this year as well. But they will be appointing Andy Green as interim manager, who does have some experience. He managed the Padres in the late 2010s, had a losing record in all 4 of his seasons, so I imagine he will probably only be the interim manager. He's been the Mets player development department head for the last 3 years, which has produced some pretty solid players, Nolan McLean and Carson Benj, coming out of the Mets minor league system during that time. You know, the Mets had looked like they were starting to turn it around, much like the Astros. In early May, they won 11. They went 11-5 to start that month, but since then they have fallen back off. They are now about 13 games below 500, only better than 2 teams in the National League, the Rockies and Giants. It's the first time the Mets have fired a manager mid-season since they let go of Willie Randolph back in 2008. Mendoza ends his Mets tenure with a 206 and 199 record, so 7 games above 500 over 2.5 seasons. His .509 career winning percentage ranks 7th highest among the 25 managers in franchise history. He took over after Buck Showalter was let go following the 2023 season. He's led some solid teams, but they were disappointing this year. And it's really interesting to me whenever a team that is not performing well lets go of their manager and the GM gets to stick around. I've never really understood how that can happen. You saw it with the Buffalo Bills this past season in the NFL as they fired Sean McDermott. So it'll be interesting to see how David Stearns, if he gets to stick around following this season. We'll see if the Mets turn it around this year or next year. But you got to think he's next in line if they don't pick it up, especially after signing Juan Soto to one of the biggest contracts really ever. Some other teams, or some other news in the standings. The Houston Astros, as I mentioned, they're pretty much back. They're back in it. They are one of the 4 teams tied for that third playoff spot, third and final wildcard spot in the AL. The top 2 spots held by the Rays and Guardians, who are 7.5 and 3 games ahead of the other 4 teams. So the Astros, A's, Rangers, and Blue Jays all tied for that final wildcard spot. So it's shaping up to be a pretty interesting pennant race down the stretch. The Yankees currently the top team in the AL with a 48-32 record, leading the AL East. And then the next best division leader at the moment is the Chicago White Sox, who are, I think, 7 games behind the Yankees at 41-38. And then the Mariners currently lead the AL West at 500 exactly, 41-41. I think it's, for a lot of the season, the team leading the AL West hasn't had a winning record. You saw it with the A's back in May. I think they were a couple of games over 500 for some of that, but the AL West has been pretty much the weakest division in baseball this year, which is wild to think about. Just 5 years ago, they had some of the best teams in the league. The Mariners and Astros perennially were in the hunt and in the conversation for World Series favorites. And they both kind of fell off this year. I'm not sure what's going on with the Mariners. Everybody thought this might be their year after coming up short in the ALCS last season to the Blue Jays. But they have not shown anything. They haven't shown much. The deadline's going to be really interesting in the AL West. How many teams are going to want to add players while they're sitting right around 500, even if they're at the top of the division? Obviously, the A's probably aren't going to add much just because they play in Sacramento right now. I don't think they're really going to make any serious attempts to compete until they finally get to their permanent residence in Las Vegas. The Rangers are right there as well, though, and they've always shown that they are willing to make big moves. You saw it in the offseason as they traded Marcus Semien to the Mets for Brandon Nimmo in a move that, seemed kind of like a net neutral move to Major League players who have had pretty similar careers offensively anyway. The only difference, Semien's an infielder and Nimmo's an outfielder. So not really sure what their logic was there. And then probably the biggest news that has come out of the last few days, as the MLB and the MLB Players Association continue to negotiate their expiring collective bargaining agreement. The MLB added on to their proposal yesterday, I believe it was. They agreed 2 of the Players Association's proposed changes, which will probably be a pretty big deal. Providing earlier access to free agency. Previously, you had to have 6 full years of service time to become a free agent. So the tweak will be, if you are 30 years or older, you will be able to reach free agency after only 5 years if you get to that at that point. So players reaching free agency a little bit quicker, a little bit younger, which will maximize their earning potential. But the other side of that is that they want to limit the maximum amount of years that a player can sign for. So they're proposing that free agent contracts will be capped at 5 years for players changing teams, and then a player re-signing with his prior team can sign for a maximum of 6 years. The Players Association has repeatedly indicated that they will not agree to anything that places a hard cap on player earnings. So the only good thing out of this is that the MLB and the Players Association are at least starting the bargaining early before the season is actually over. Hopefully there's not a lockout to start the 2027 season, but it is increasingly looking more likely that that's going to happen, as the two sides seem to be really, really far apart on the biggest issues here, like the payroll disparity and just parity in general, with the Dodgers spending so much money and being the best team year after year. It's not really great for fan interest, and I see what the MLB is saying in that, but the players are just not going to want to agree to anything that limits their earning potential. We have seen it in the NFL and the NBA, but there's never been a salary cap in baseball, and I really don't know if there ever will. This is the Louis Bellina Show. We are brought to you by CC Electric inside the Charles Schwab studio. We're going to take our first break of the show. We'll come back, and we're going to talk about the resurgence of the Astros. I teased it a little bit earlier. This is the Louis Bellina Show on The Zone.
The Money Machine Back to School. It's your chance to win $5,000, and it starts July 27th.
Thank you so much.
Welcome back to the Louis Bellina Show here on The Zone, 1150 AM, 93.7 FM inside the Charles Schwab studio. If you want to have your opinion heard, you can call or text 979-693-1150. That's the D4 Land Services hotline. Text in your thoughts to the Texas Mobile One in Express inbox. We will hear your thoughts if you want to talk about NASCAR or the World Cup like we are going to do in the second hour. I want to hear your takes. I know that there are some NASCAR fans out there listening. Please give me your thoughts. We're going to talk about the Houston Astros here in this segment. They are finally turning the corner now into the playoffs as of today anyway. 40-43, 3 games under 500, second place in the AL West. Only a game and a half back of the Mariners for the division lead. I think it was about mid-May that we finally started to see a little bit of the light at the end of the tunnel. So they are 24-17 since May 11th. Their bullpen has been one of the best in baseball in that time, with an ERA of 2.84 in those games, an opponent batting average of 1.99. They're the only team in the MLB with a sub-3 ERA and a sub-200 opponent batting average in that time span. So they've really turned it around. And the starting pitchers as well, especially over the last few games. You saw just yesterday Tatsuya Imai have one of his best starts that he's had at the major league level. Again, this is his rookie season for those of y'all who do not know his story. He was signed out of Japan this past offseason, so this is his first year in the MLB. Was pretty highly coveted international free agent. So we were pretty excited when we brought him in, and it started off pretty rough. It has been not great for the first part of the season, 5.36 ERA overall. But you've really started to see since he took part in that combined no-hitter, I think that was about a month ago now, he's been a lot better. If you just look at his past 2 starts, 6 innings in each of those. On the 19th, last Friday, against the Guardians at home, he went 6 innings, 3 earned runs, and a career-high 11 strikeouts. He followed that up last night by going 6 innings shutout. Only 2 hits he gave up in the win over the Tigers on the road, and struck out 10 batters in that one. So he really is starting to show what he can do at the major league level. I think he can, if he can keep this performance up, it will be a huge boost to this pitching staff, which has struggled mightily with injuries. Peter Lambert and Spencer Arrighetti have been the only 2 guys that have really held it down for the Astros in the starting rotation. But Imai has started to look good. And finally, we got a good start out of Mike Burrows the other day against the Blue Jays in that series finale. He went 6 innings, only 1 earned run, 93 pitches, only 2 hits in that one as well. So really efficient. The pitching staff, I think, has definitely been what has powered this for the Astros. The hitting has been consistently, I would say, pretty middle of the road throughout the year, other than at the very beginning when they were the best offense in baseball for like 2 weeks, which was really weird because the pitching was so bad that it didn't matter. But since then, I think they've pretty much been fairly middle of the road on the offensive side. So not terrible. And if it wasn't for Yordan Alvarez, it probably would be really terrible, as he is in contention to maybe bring home the AL Triple Crown this year. He's hitting over 300, I think 25 homers now, which is up there with the league leaders. He has been incredible this year. If the Astros do manage to complete this comeback and make the playoffs, I think he absolutely deserves the most valuable player award. We'll see if that actually happens, but he is absolutely on pace to be in consideration for that award if this pitching staff can keep it up. Looking at last night's box score, 2-1 victory over the Tigers, which the Tigers have not been great this year. But their starting pitcher, Troy Melton, was working a perfect game into the 6th inning. As with one out in the 6th inning, the first hit or first base runner of any kind was a solo home run by Taylor Trammell, who has been really solid over the last few weeks here. He's had some big moments, and this was one of them, a 422-foot homer down the right field line to break up that perfect game. It was a huge moment for the Astros that really turned the tide, got the momentum going the right way. Ime obviously was holding it down with a great start, but breaking up that perfect game was huge. Ended up knocking Melton out of the game after that 6th inning, and the Astros were able to score another run in the top of the 9th off of Kenley Jansen. A sacrifice fly from Isaac Paredes scored Jeremy Pena, who went 2 for 4. Pena's been great at the top of the order since he's returned from his injury. I think he's finally fully healthy and getting back into the swing of things. So the top 4 or 5 in the lineup, really solid. The bottom half has not been good this year. If the Astros are going to compete, they really are going to have to pick up a bat of some kind at the trade deadline or sometime in the next month before that deadline. That is definitely going to be the biggest need, is outfield help. As the starting outfield for the Astros yesterday was Joey Loperfido, Cam Smith, and Taylor Trammell, who I have combined for an OPS of probably around 680. I think that there were 5 players in the lineup yesterday who had OPSs below 7, which is generally considered to be about league average. So having half of your starting players be below league average offensively is not how you're going to make the playoffs or win a World Series. So they definitely need to at least get one bat that's going to change that, and hope that Pena and Alvarez can stay hot. Christian Walker has also looked like the Christian Walker that we thought we were signing a couple years ago. After a little bit of a disappointing season in 2025, he has really stepped up this year and been really solid for the squad. In that 4-hole pretty much throughout the year, playing first base. Obviously, defensively has never been a problem with him. I think he's a 3 or 4-time Gold Glove winner. But this year, a 769 OPS, up from a 717 last year. 18 homers in only 81 games. So exactly at the halfway point right now, on pace for over 30 homers. Really excited to see if he can keep that up. But he's been extremely solid for the Astros. Jake Myers has, and the whole outfield really, but Myers especially, a 578 OPS. He's only hitting 203. We just can't have a guy like that getting so much playing time while he's struggling. But we just don't really have the outfield depth right now to do anything about it. You don't really want to play Jordan out there because this is the first time in a while that he has played. He's been healthy for this long. He's played 82 games this year. Last year, he only managed 48. So you don't really want to risk the possibility of him getting injured. So keeping him in that DH spot as much as you can is going to be what's best for the team. But that being said, you got to have some other players step up and fill those outfield roles. So trading for one, I think, is going to be the only way to do that. Like I said, Loperfido, Myers, Smith, Matthews, Trammell are the guys that have gotten the most playing time out there this year. And Trammell has been the best, but he's only had 90 plate appearances. So I think they need to get him a lot more playing time because he's been the best by kind of a lot. And then it's been Joey Loperfido right behind him. And also, they're pretty much the 2 guys that have gotten the least playing time out of those 5. So getting them in the lineup a lot more, I think, is going to be good for the squad. Obviously, there's still a lot of players on the IL that will be coming back soon. Mentioned last week, I think Nick Allen is coming back soon. And we'll see if that makes any kind of difference offensively, but he's been a great defender. You know, he was the player we got back in the Mauricio Dubon trade over the offseason. Kind of a similar player to Doobie. Very versatile defender. Can hit the ball a little bit. He has 1 homer this year, .250 batting average. So I think a full season, Nick Allen can definitely contribute. We will see, though. The Astros have gone 13-9 so far in June. I think they've won, it's 4 series in a row now. Started with the 2 out of 3 series win over the Royals on the road. And they followed that up by taking 2 out of 3 at home against the Tigers and then the Guardians. And then started their road trip on Monday with a 2-4 loss to the Blue Jays, but then won the next 2 games of that series. And now they are in Detroit. Opened the series last night with a 2-1 win. 3 more games out there against the Tigers before they come back home Monday against the Twins. So this is a pretty weak part of the schedule for the Astros throughout the rest of June and into July. It's a really, really good opportunity for them to capitalize, and I could see them hopefully getting back to 500 by the end of this stretch. And if that happens, that puts them in a great spot to possibly lead the division. The Mariners have not done anything special. They are 4-6 in their last 10. A 2-game losing streak for them so far. And then the A's and Rangers are also both 4-6 in their last 10. So this is a huge opportunity for the Astros. They really need to capitalize on this momentum while they have it. And I really think that they're completely back in the conversation. They can make some noise this year if they keep it up. Really exciting to watch, especially after last season's disappointment. We are going to take our second break of the show. On the other side, we will have Greg McElroy, a listen in from his Always College Football podcast, ranking the top 10 defensive back rooms in college football for the 2026 season. So get excited for that. This is the Louis Bellina Show, presented by CC Electric.
The Houston Astros play in the zone. Thanks to Kelly Bird Dozer.
Welcome back to the Louis Bellina Show here on the Zone, 1150 AM, 93.7 FM. Caleb Rappolee here, guest hosting for Louis. The last Friday in June, so the last time I will get to spend time with y'all during this 11 to 1 window. The Louis Bellina Show, we are inside the Charles Schwab studio. Low cost, full service, and best of all, local. That's Schwab. Visit Mark in College Station and experience a modern approach to wealth management, or find them online at schwab.com/college station. Charles Schwab and Company Incorporated, member SIPC. It is time for our part 1 of our Listen In, Greg McElroy's Always College Football podcast, breaking down the top 10 secondaries in the nation in the 2026 season.
Okay, before we get to the top 10, let's get to some names and some teams that narrowly missed. We'll start with Indiana, defending national champ, and we know Amari Farrell's a legitimate star, right? A lot of interceptions, a lot of production, a lot of people projecting him as a guy that could go as early as the second day of the draft, decides to come back. And if you look at this defense and Kurt Cignetti's track record, Bryant Haynes' track record, rebuilding through the portal, the Hoosiers could easily climb back into this conversation by October. But the quarterback room around Farrell, you get a portal transfer for Penn State. You get a backup that has never really been a guy. I mean, I am always optimistic about Kurt Cignetti's portal evaluations, but pretty much everything's gone. However, Farrell alone gets them in the conversation almost into the top 10, not quite into the top 10. We'll go next to Fresno State. Simeon Harris came back. He was terrific within the Mountain West last season, added a bunch of pounds of muscle this season. Apparently, sounds like he's bigger, he's stronger, he's more capable of being physically imposing. You get a bunch of starters back for Nick Benedetto on defense. He's the defensive coordinator. And if you look at the numbers last year, Fresno was one of the top 2 in the country when it came to pass defense. They were holding opponents to about 150 yards a game. They did lose 4 starting defensive backs. Less than half the secondary snaps at corner are returning. But Fresno State is kind of living proof of what this episode is about. You would think, looking back, all right, yeah, they're going to be pretty good. But when you look at them this year, honorable mention. First season in the Pac-12, so a lot of new surrounding their program. So they're close. I think they deserve honorable mention based on what was accomplished last year, but they don't quite crack the top 10. We'll go next to Iowa. Look, Zach Lutmer is tremendous, right? Defensive MVP, one of the more versatile defenders in the entire country. And what has Phil Parker done forever? He's always producing a top 15 pass defense, it seems like. I mean, every year he's in that mix. But they lose 2 starting safeties. You also have to account for their starting quarterback, TJ Hall, and replacing them primarily with a couple transfers, a couple guys that are stepping up in competition. But you got to know that Phil Parker's going to get more out of those pieces than just about anyone expects. He always does. So you watch for Iowa. By the time the mid-season point rolls around, I would anticipate that group playing top-flight football. We'll go next to Mississippi State. I want you to remember the name Kelly Jones. He's got a lot of length, right? 6'4". He also did a great job in defending top-tier wide receivers that he saw last year. He actually led the country in coverage snaps per reception. So people weren't trying him an awful lot. There weren't a lot of people that were attempting throws in his direction. So when you watch him, you understand. He doesn't just sit and wait. I mean, he's got length. He can attack the catch point. He'll drive on routes. And when cornerbacks do throw his way, they usually regret it pretty quickly. There were some projections that he could come out and potentially become a high-level NFL draft pick, but he decides to return, and that's conviction. I think he's probably one of the more underrated individual defensive backs in the country. While the unit itself is not top 10, he is a top 10 player at his position, and he's probably going to make a lot of money playing the sport and defending high-level receivers for the foreseeable future. At number 10, it's the Penn State Nittany Lions. Now, the Nittany Lions, they lost A.J. Harris to the transfer portal, and he was widely assumed to be one of the better corners in the country last year. Didn't quite live up to it, but what Penn State has left is a little more interesting than what the national media is giving them credit for. You get Javian Collins, who's back. He's played and has been very consistent at the corner spot. You also get Darius Dixon back. He's a sophomore, enrolled as a highly ranked recruit last couple of years, and coming out of spring practice, people who watch Dixon every day say that he has legitimate shutdown potential. And that's not just a stat line, right? That comes from watching a man that is physically refusing to let receivers get off the ball or off the line of scrimmage. At safety, you get the transfer in from Iowa State and Marcus Neal, who was a second-team Big 12, all Big 12 selection a year ago, and is kind of an experienced anchor in the back end. If you look at their coaching staff in general, and their cornerbacks coach in particular, Terry Smith, he's one of the best in the country at his position. And to stay with the program through a head coaching transition is difficult to do, but that retention matters, right? So they're in at number 10 because you got Collins plus Dixon. It's a legitimate starting duo, and I think Neal gives them legitimate depth and prove-it ability at safety. The question mark, yeah, a little bit different with the head coaching staff and where they're at, but new coach, new culture, new everything. You got to kind of earn your way onto the list right now, but I think 10 is about right with what they have coming in. At number 9, it's the Texas A&M Aggies. Look, Des Ricks is back, and that kind of earns A&M the spot, right? If you look at Ricks, he's an all-SEC candidate at corner, entering year 3 of Mike Elko's defensive identity. And if you look at the Aggies last year, yes, a lot of them talk centered around their front 7, but the secondary did their part as well. And while maybe it isn't the most locked down secondary we've seen for the Aggies, they did a really good job, and the scheme helps for sure. They were 16th last year in opponent passing yards, and to be top 20 in a pass-happy SEC, it's not an accident. They go out, they add Ricky Gibson. You go out and add Tawfiq Byard from Colorado to kind of fill some of the depth chart around Ricks. And if you look at the honest caveat, I mean, A&M's own beat reporters came out of the spring saying the secondary depth was a little bit still unsettled, but they described it as really competitive. And while some people would say, yeah, unsettled, that's concerning, to me, highly competitive is exactly what you want to hear. That means no one has really separated themselves, but it might be as a result of the fact that all together are making each other better. And the rest of the room is kind of proving it alongside Ricks, who has a chance to be a lockdown guy on one side of the ball. Look, A&M, they sit at number 9 because it's an SEC program with legitimate lockdown corner. And I think third-year continuity in Elko's system is going to help. So you earn that ranking, right? But this is a little bit on the upside buy with what Elko's proven over the last couple of years. We'll go next to number 8. That's the Michigan Wolverines. When you think about Michigan's secondary entering into 26, it probably hasn't gotten enough attention. You get both starting corners back for the third consecutive year. Jair Hill is an all Big Ten corner entering in his final year in Ann Arbor. Zeke Berry is his running mate, also third year as a starter. You had Smith Sode from Utah as a legitimate nickel presence. Guy's got 24 career starts and was second team all Big 12 last year. It's one of the better transfer portal acquisitions in the conference in this cycle. At safety, you got Mason Curtis and Rod Moore, who provide really experienced depth. And while it is a new defensive coordinator in Jay Hill, who was brought in from BYU, he built one of the better defenses in the country last year, especially in the red zone, and a secondary that led the conference in interceptions last year. So his entire defensive system is built around creating havoc up front, but also making sure those defensive backs are extremely sound. And Hill won't necessarily be asking these corners to survive in coverage. These corners might be asked to do a little bit more, but they're not going to give up big plays. They're going to be very sound. And I like this group kind of across the board. They check in at number 8, and the experience is a big reason why. At number 7, it's the Oregon Ducks. Yes, the Ducks lost Dylan Thieneman to the Chicago Bears in the first round. You lose Jaden Kennedy to the Kansas City Chiefs. Those are two guys that can play at a really high level, right? Gone. And yet Oregon still sits at number 7. Here's why. Dan Lanning, he recruited Thieneman out of the portal from Purdue, made him into a first-round pick in one season, and then immediately went back to the portal and got 2 more safeties to replace him. He goes out and gets Coy Parrish from Minnesota, gets Carl Williams from Baylor. That's not a coincidence. That's a system. At corner, you got Brandon Finney, who's a sophomore that's entering into his second year as starter. And we know there's going to be a massive developmental leap in trajectory. And we know Dan Lanning's staff, they're built to accelerate that developmental leap, right? The argument for Oregon is not the names on the depth chart. It's a bit of the track record of the program and the way they assemble this talent together. I mean, go back and watch what Thieneman looked like in week 1 versus what he looked like in December. And that's what Lanning's staff does for defensive backs. It's a system that kind of earns the benefit of the doubt. That's why Oregon is in at number 7. At number 6, it's the Ohio State Buckeyes. And they lost a lot, right? To lose Caleb Downs as the number 11 overall pick. I mean, the guy was a 2-time unanimous All-American, the best safety in college football for the last 2 years. He's gone. And he did more than just play safety for Ohio State last year. He was so good, so instinctive, such an amazing player for the Buckeyes the last 2 seasons. You also lose Davidson Igbinosun, who went in the second round to the Buffalo Bills, and Lorenzo Styles. So you lose 3 of the 5 primary starters in the defensive backfield. And the number that you need to understand before I tell you why Ohio State is number 6 is because they gave up 130 passing yards a game last year. They were number 1 in the country by a decent margin. The number 2 unit in the country allowed 153. So Ohio State didn't just lead the country in pass defense, they lapped the field. And yet they're still 6 on the list because when you lose Caleb Downs and Davison Igbinosun and Lorenzo Styles in the same offseason, it doesn't matter necessarily that you were number 1. What matters is kind of more what you have coming back. And what Ohio State has coming back is still worthy of being top 6, which is remarkable because Ohio State's secondary infrastructure is a separate thing from Ohio State's individual players. I mean, you have Ryan Day, you got Tim Walton, you got scheme continuity through multiple successful seasons and multiple eyes on the defensive side of the ball. So you look at what they have coming back. You got Jalen McClain coming back. You got Jermaine Matthews coming back. Those 2 guys at safety and at corner, respectively, proven starters in the system. You go out and add an Earl Little from Florida State. You add a Terry Moore from Duke. Players who had starting level production elsewhere and chose Ohio State because of what it could do for their draft stock moving forward. And you add in Devin Sanchez, who had a spring that scouts are clearly excited about. The Buckeyes reload. They do not rebuild. And that's why even with the absences of top-tier players from a year ago, Ohio State starts out the 26th season as our top 6 secondary.
That was part 1 of our Listen In, Greg McElroy's top 10 secondaries in college football for 2026. Part 2 will be at 12:35. He'll get to the top 5 secondaries in the nation. This is Caleb Rappolee guest hosting on the Louis Bellina Show as part of the summer edition of the show. Be sure to have your voice heard, 979-693-1150. You can call or text that number. That's the D4 Land Services hotline. If you text in, drop your thoughts into the Texas Mobile One Lube Express inbox. Texas Mobile One Lube Express, where they say, be good to your car and it'll be good to you. How do you be good to your car? You take it to Texas Mobile One Lube Express.
Blending Southern culture with college football.
You guys are awesome.
Music, sport commentary, and more. It's Marty and McGee.
Marty and McGee.
Saturday mornings from 6 to 9 on the Zone 1150 AM and 93.7 FM.
Welcome back to the Louis Bellina Show. Caleb Rappolee here on the Zone 1150 AM, 93.7 FM. The Louis Bellina Show is brought to you by CC Electric, built on faith, family, and community. It is CC Electric. We're almost out of time here in the first hour, but wanted to get to some other Aggie sports news. The Texas A&M Aggie men's basketball team had their conference opponents announced. So the way the SEC basketball schedule will work this year, you will have 3 mirror opponents, so you'll play them at home and on the road. And then 6 teams that you will play only at home, 6 teams you will play only on the road. So a total of, I think, 18 conference games, if I'm doing that math correctly. And I'm an Aggie, so you never know. But the mirror opponents for Texas A&M, as expected, obviously, the Texas Longhorns, the LSU Tigers, and then an interesting one, the Vanderbilt Commodores. So not really sure what criteria they did to determine these mirror opponents, but Vanderbilt's definitely an interesting one. I don't think we fared very well against them this year, if I remember correctly. So the teams we will be playing at home will be Auburn, Alabama, Arkansas, Tennessee, Oklahoma, and Georgia. And then the teams on the road will be Florida, Missouri, Kentucky, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and South Carolina. Really excited for Aggie basketball this year. Bucky has been cooking in the transfer portal. PJ Haggerty is the leading returning scorer in the NCAA in the entire nation. So really excited to see the Aggie men's basketball team this year. And then I would think it was yesterday afternoon, it was announced that the A&M baseball team will be returning to Houston for the Bruce Bolt Classic in 2027 at Dyken Park. That should be a lot of fun. The 6-team field will be A&M, Houston, Louisiana, Louisville, UConn, and Utah. They will open up their Bruce Bolt College Classic schedule March 5th at 7 p.m. So looking forward to that. Will be a lot of fun to see the Aggies back in Dyken Park. It's time to open up the ticket booth presented by Dixie Tire Company. Caller number 5 at 979-693-1150. Caller number 5 will win a $50 Rudy's gift card. So call in now for your chance to win. Caller number 5, 979-693-1150. Thanks to Dixie Tire Company. Family-owned Dixie Tire Company is your authorized Mastercraft and Cooper Tires dealer. Tires for your car, truck, tractor trailer, lawnmower, or even your wheelbarrow. Dixie Tire Company has been serving BCS for over 35 years. 301 West William J. Bryan Parkway in historical downtown Bryan, across from the fire station. Open Mondays through Fridays until 6 and Saturdays until 1. Give them a call at 775-TIRE. Again, caller number 5, 979-693-1150. You will win a $50 gift card to Rudy's Barbecue. So get excited for that. Call in for that. That's going to do it for our time here in the first hour.
The flagship station for Aggie Athletics is The Zone. Whenever the Aggies are playing, you can hear them right here at 1150 and 93.7. Thanks to our Aggie broadcast sponsors who make it happen. Schulte Roofing, home of the bulletproof roof guarantee. Prosperity Bank, real bankers, not just a bank. And the Angry Elephant, like your bar, love your Aggies. Listen to the games on The Zone 1150 and 93.7 FM.